And as I said, modularization and the ability to take this house apart and assemble somewhere else in the future. This is basically a modular construction. This house is going to be created or erected in a period of 8 weeks. So very, very fast-track construction, purely because we're looking at almost like automotive industry methods of construction. And so see some of the initial visuals of the house, looking at very large expanses of living and sleeping spaces that will allow for cross-ventilation. Deep overhangs to provide an element of shade and protection from the low-angle sun. And louvers, obviously, sort of to counteract that also. What about the working environment? How do we sort of address working in a sustainable way? Well, I think that it's fair to say that we're moving away from Taylor's model of the workplace in the early 20th century, and we're increasingly in the position where we can work where we want, when we want. I don't know about you, but I actually don't like working in an office. I don't work a 9 to 5. I have very unusual hours. I like working in a square with a cup of coffee or a glass of red wine. That's when I'm most productive. And I think productivity is key in the workplace. So we need to ensure that there are those socioeconomic facilities that can actually improve the productivity at the workplace, and therefore also provide opportunities for companies to actually make more income. BP Campus is a project that we've been working on over the last 15 years with BP. What was originally a sporadic series of buildings in the Sunbury landscape has over time been transformed into a business park that is carbon neutral and basically has 50,000 square meters of net lettable area. The Central Link building is not only environmentally responsive but socially responsive. It has all of those social activities that can actually help produce a greater amount of productivity for the worker, and also all of those relevant means of recreation and amenity, you know, the gym, the coffee shops, the ability to sort of work wirelessly. In terms of the playing environment, I think it's fair to say that we have kind of embraced the mall as the new sort of playground. I live in Singapore now, and dare I say, I'm slightly horrified that I'm finding myself spending more and more time in the retail mall. It's putting a huge dent into my wallet, and I don't know. I guess the air conditioning sort of keeps me cool from the sort of the torrential heat outside. But I guess there are ways of actually minimizing the carbon footprint of the retail environment. The image on the left-hand side, as I'm sure you recognize, is the ubiquitous sort of air-conditioned box, which is very, very car-intensive. But perhaps we should be considering older models, like the 19th century arcade, that provides an ease of movement through the city in a very, very sort of cultured environment, but also providing shade from the wind and rain and also the sun. This is Galleria Vittorio Emanuele in Milan. It links the Piazza Duomo with Piazza della Scala, two primary squares that were places of social interaction in the 19th century. Why not actually start to reinterpret that for the 21st century more? And that's what we're trying to do in La Terrazza. This is a scheme in La Spezia in Italy. What it does, it starts to reinterpret the open space network within the medieval city and start to recreate that within this sort of new mall typology. It also reinterprets the colour palettes of the facade and the strata-like formations in the hills, thus giving back to the people something that they're familiar with, and not necessarily giving them a spaceship that comes out of nowhere and lands in their sort of city. So what we have is something that is very, very sort of culturally rooted in terms of the colour palette, the opportunity to create a 24-hour arcade that goes through the building. And what happens with the arcade? You increase the footfall. What happens with increased footfall? There's increased income generation opportunities for the shop owners. This is then brought through into the graphics and branding, and therefore even the shoppers actually have the sense of where they are culturally rooted. So as an integrated process, it provides a greater opportunity not just for the end user to give something back to civil society, but it also allows us to explore the idea of a sustainable process. When we go out to work with you lovely clients, sometimes things get lost in translation. I may come up with a vision with my black pen, but it may be very, very different to the branding consultant or very different to the interior consultant. But by having a coordinated solution that embraces a clear storyline across a breadth of design activities, what it allows for is a sustainable process. And the only way you'll ever get to that sustainable product is if there is a sustainable process in place. And basically what that means is that we're cutting out a lot of waste and time that would otherwise have been sort of used up if we're using some more conventional processes of design. In terms of relaxation, I think it's fair to say that the hospitality environment has come under particular criticism of recent because of the sometimes Disneyland sort of focus on what constitutes delight. And also, if you're walking into sort of your hotel room, you switch on your rainfall water shower and you leave your towels everywhere and you're sort of leaving the lights on, is that necessarily that sustainable? So I guess hotel operators are wrestling with this sort of juxtaposition between restraint and delight. You want to be able to give your clientele the opportunity for a rainfall shower, but at the same time we have a responsibility to the environment. So how do you actually sort of balance that sense of restraint and delight? For Calm Shore, what we did is basically take a cue from nature. We looked at the Sidewinder through the desert because it almost emulated the environment that we were dealing with. And the form of the building actually starts to create alternative character areas. The Broadwalk, the lush green gardens, the beach cove, the oasis pool and the piazza. Spaces that will provide opportunities for tranquility, waterborne recreation, social interaction and co-presence within the squares, which will be fringed with retail, and a Broadwalk for active promenading. Some of the key elements that sort of constitute good quality hospitality. But it also means that we need to ensure that we can try and minimize the energy consumption within the building and provide choice to the clientele to decide if they want to have a rainfall water shower, they can do so, but at the same time be conscious of their water consumption so that they can be sort of minimizing their footprint. And so we undertook computational fluid dynamics tests to ensure that we were able to cross-ventilate the hotel in order to sort of minimize its carbon footprint. Looked at photovoltaic cell technology that would be able to create 10% of the building's energy in order to offset the carbon footprint. And similarly, how that is then drawn into the graphics and branding to ensure that there was the sense of rooting into the cultural locale, given the sort of the tin mining industry of this particular area, looking at silvers and greys, looking at how it can be making reference to the historical past.